Earlier, I spoke to the Transport Secretary, Louise Haigh. Secretary of State, is it true that the government's negotiating migration deals with Libya, Tunisia, Kurdistan?
Well, the Prime Minister and the Home Secretary have made no secret that this is an international problem that needs international solutions, and that's why both of them have been working with our counterparts across Europe and across the world to make sure that we have deals and agreements in place that can tackle this issue. We can't tackle it on our own at the border. That's why the Prime Minister was at Interpol recently talking about exactly this issue. And we need to tackle the problem upstream. Just last week, the biggest supplier of small boat engines, one of the biggest suppliers, was arrested in the Netherlands and deported to Belgium. And that was a direct consequence of cooperation between the National Crime Agency and its counterparts. And that's exactly what we mean by this kind of operation.
So that's a yes. We are thinking about working with third countries in various ways. Why is this different to Rwanda?
Well, Rwanda was a failed gimmick that managed to solve absolutely nothing.
That's because you scrapped it. Why is it different? You're working with another country to help deal with this problem internationally. Why is this such a big difference?
Well, Rwanda wasn't working well before we scrapped it on coming into office. It was costing the taxpayer a fortune. It clearly wasn't working as a deterrent, and it wasn't resolving the issue at source. What we're talking about is resolving the issue upstream. So tackling and smashing the gangs, as Keir Starmer has repeatedly talked about, in order to stop the boats coming over at all. The Rwanda scheme wasn't deterring boats.
But if I may say so, I'm asking you about these particular potential deals, Vietnam and Kurdistan. Lots of countries are doing this. How much is it going to cost you?
Well, I'm not going to talk about individual deals or operational deals, but what I can say is this absolutely characterises our approach, working with international partners in a long-term, serious way, not attempting headline-grabbing distractions, which was all that the Rwanda scheme was, and it failed to stop a single small boat or remove a single individual.
Yeah, but you're still going to end up spending some hundreds of millions on this, aren't you?
Well, we're wasting hundreds of millions at the moment with hotel accommodation, with a failed system that is failing to tackle the problem. Yvette Cooper is a serious person, a serious Home Secretary that is committed to working with our international partners in order to tackle the problem in the long term.
All right, the Prime Minister didn't go abroad, went to Wales yesterday. Why did he not have anything in his speech that held out hope to the farming community that the things that they object to, particularly the changes to inheritance tax, might be alleviated?
Well, I think what Keir Starmer set out to our Welsh Labour conference yesterday was a defence of the budget. And look, none of us came into politics in order to leverage tax on the farming community, but we were left with a very difficult fiscal inheritance, as the Chancellor and lots of my colleagues will have spoken to your viewers about, that left us with a 22 billion black hole. In transport alone, I inherited nearly £3 billion of unfunded transport projects and pressures. And that has led to difficult decisions.
Your colleagues have told me that many times, but what I really want to know is, why did he have nothing to say to farmers yesterday? They were gathered, they're demonstrating. From what their leaders say, they're hurting. Prime Minister had nothing to say to them.
Well, colleagues have met with representatives of the farming community, and we do understand concerns. We appreciate how hard farmers work. I've got people in my own circle of family and friends that work extraordinarily hard in farming and earn very little as a result. But these decisions had to be made, and we think they've been made in a fair and proportionate way in order to fund public services. What I would say in order to address the exact question about what we've got to offer farmers...
But the money you're talking about is just a few million. And if I may say so, is it wise for the farming minister to respond to the anger of farmers by telling them to calm down, which is apparently what he's done?
Well, I don't think we would use exact language
That's
like
what he
that.
said. He said, look at this calmly. Perhaps you might want to correct the tone of that a little bit?
We absolutely recognise the enormous contribution that farmers make to our economy and to feeding the nation. And we've recognised that actually through our New Deal for Farmers, which Steve Reed, the Environment Secretary, has set out, which includes reforming our procurement rules to require 50% of food in our public spaces, public sector, to be produced by British farmers. This will be an enormous boost to the farming industry. Also set out protections for them with future trade deals and bringing down energy bills. This will be transformative for a lot of farmers across the country. So we do recognise the difficult situation that many are in, but we think the choices that we've set out in the budget are fair and proportionate.
If I can use a food metaphor, that feels like jam tomorrow. What the farmers are bothered about, what's happening today, and they're going to respond today. Are you concerned about the prospect of empty shelves as we enter the winter months?
No, we think we put forward food security really as a priority, and we'll work with farmers and the supply chain in order to ensure that. But the changes that we've made...
You and they just say, you know, you've dropped it on us. We are going to show you, as they seem to be saying, we're going to show you how valuable we are by making sure that you understand what happens if we don't have the family farms that you're about to wreck.
Look, I think what we need to do is look at this in the round and see that, as I say, the Environment Secretary has set out a major package of measures that will support all farmers. These tax measures are applied to farms that are worth over £1 million and only in inheritance tax situations. Yeah. And even when inheritance tax is applied, it's set at half what everyone else would apply on that
We've heard
threshold.
that. They clearly don't believe you, but just let's deal with a practical point. If I may let's say, do a public service announcement. Can you assure us that the government has contingency plans in place to make sure that we don't have food shortages if the farmers carry out their threats to ratchet up action?
Well, of course, the Department for Environment and Food and Rural Affairs will be setting out plans for the winter and setting out... well, as business as usual, we'll be setting out contingency plans and ensuring that food security is treated as the priority it deserves to be.
All right, let's move on to your own territory, which is buses. You're talking about your plan to invest in buses. I'll come to that in a second. Can I just get one thing clear? Is it the government's intention to keep the £3 cap on bus fares beyond next year?
So the plans that we inherited would have ended the cap completely on the 31st of December. We've stepped in with funding to protect it at £3 until the 31st of December next year. And in that period, we'll look to establish more targeted approaches. We've, through evaluation of the £2 cap, found that the best approach is to target it at young people. So we want to look at ways in order to ensure more targeted ways, just like we do with the concessionary fare for older people. We think we can develop more targeted ways that will better encourage people onto buses.
Oh, that's interesting.
And be better value for
so
money.
After 31st December 2025, the expectation should be that we won't have a single cap, but you might try to find ways in which, as you put it, you can target subsidy bus relief on bus fares at particular groups of people?
That's what we're considering at the moment as we go through this year, as we have that time whilst the £3 cap is in place, because the evaluation that we had showed it hadn't represented good value for money, the previous cap. We want to protect rural routes, which we've done through the £3 cap, and we want to protect young people and older people. But we want to make sure that buses are available, that they are reliable, because actually it's the reliability of buses that keeps most people off them. If you live in a lot of small towns or villages, you've not got a bus before 9 a.m. or after 5 p.m. Okay. And that's what stops people catching the bus, and that's what is behind our announcement today. Your
announcement is for a £1 billion cash boost for bus travel, and you're putting it into various schemes. Is that £1 billion over and above the £930 million that last government committed in, I think, the project it was called Network North, or is that the same money?
Well, the money that was announced in Network North wasn't committed, it wasn't agreed. And when I entered office, there wasn't any budget for buses. So the billion that we're announcing today is entirely new money, and entirely new money agreed by the Treasury. So the previous government could go around announcing any kind of figures it wants, but until it was in the budget and or in a spending review, then it wasn't destined.
So just to be clear, is that the Network North project, which I think dealt with, was going to give money to, for example, Blackburn, is that gone now? That's scrapped?
It never existed in the first place, Trevor. I'm sure you know that. If you go around announcing money that hasn't been agreed by the Treasury...
Yeah, but if you talk to somebody in this business in Blackburn, I think they expected to see the, whatever it was, £700 million heading their way. So they're going to be disappointed now, aren't they?
Well, no, because today we have announced, through the budget, we have announced that they are getting it. And actually what we've done with this pot of money is devise a formula that sits behind it, that is fair, that is transparent, and that means that every part of the country gets it. You know, the previous government had funding streams that were competitive. They required people to spend money on bid writers and writing applications, and then some people got nothing out of it. We have devised a formula that sits behind the funding that is based on population.
But to be absolutely clear, all those people who thought they were going to get money out of the Network North project, are you saying that that's all gone and that maybe some of them will, some of them won't, or are you saying they will get the money under your new scheme? Well,
we're announcing today £1 billion of bus funding, so that's more than was...
Yeah, but the people who were expecting money that the Tories promised them, doesn't matter whether it was funded or not, the Tories promised them this money, are they going to get the money or not?
They are getting the money. They are getting money that we're announcing today, and we're setting out...
So why is it a new scheme?
...that everyone's getting. Well, we're setting out a fair formula behind it, and like I say, there was no money out of Network North. It was nonsense.
Okay.
It wasn't funded, it wasn't agreed by the Treasury, it wasn't set out in a budget or a spending review. And the budget I inherited didn't include any money allocated to buses, so this is all new money that's been negotiated by the Treasury, and as I say, it's allocated on a fair basis. It means places like Blackburn, like Devon, like Kent, like Essex are getting an enormous uplift in both capital and revenue for their bus services, which will be transformative.
The big gorilla in your garden is HS2. Is it actually going to run to Crewe?
No, HS2 will not run to Crewe. HS2 Phase 1 will be delivered, which is Birmingham to Euston.
So Birmingham to Crewe and all that, forget it.
So it's running to Birmingham.
Andy Burnham's going to be disappointed. So
we're working with Andy Burnham and Richard Parker, the Mayor of the West Midlands, and actually I'm meeting them both tomorrow to discuss what needs to be done north of Birmingham. But I'm very clear, we're not resurrecting the plans for HS2, and HS2 Limited isn't getting any further work beyond what's been commissioned to Euston.
All right. There is a major private member's bill coming to the House of Commons shortly on the what we must describe as physician-assisted suicide. How will you vote?
I am still considering. It's a matter of public record that I voted in favour last time, and that is where I am leaning, if I, totally honestly. But I am really conscious that there are concerns, particularly from disabled advocacy groups, around and concerns around palliative care. So I am considering that. I think this is a really important moment for the country as a whole to reflect. I don't think anybody should, for a second, think that as MPs we don't take this decision seriously, and it's a very, very difficult decision that I am weighing up on both sides. So
are you concerned, as your Cabinet colleague Wes Streeting is, about the absence of palliative care, as he puts it anyway?
I think we can all acknowledge that palliative care isn't in as good a state as it should be. So I am listening to those concerns, but I also don't think this is an either or, and that's why I'm weighing up all those representations. I'm very conscious that people have very strong views on both sides, and I'm talking to my constituents about it.
We'll be playing an interview a little later with the Bishop of Newcastle, in which she reflects on the resignation of the Archbishop of Canterbury. She claims that a culture of silence and fear in the upper ranks of the Church of England is part of the reason that the abuse that we've now learned about was not identified earlier. Is this doing, if you like, irreparable damage to the Church and its place, for example, in Parliament?
Well, I mean, first and foremost, I think we have to think about the victims of this horrific set of crimes, and it's appalling that only now is this properly coming to light and people are talking about it in the way that they are, and the issues that it undoubtedly arises for the Church of England. I think we have to listen to Bishop Helen, and we have to accept that that is true. If she's saying that, that's how she feels, then the Church absolutely needs to act on it. And as a member of the Church of England myself, I want to see the Church acting on it in a transparent way.
Secretary of State, thank you very much for your time this morning.
Thank you.